Angry Ben is always a fun Ben. Glad to have our first guest. You know him, of course, host of the Ben Shapiro Show on the Daily Wire, now nationally syndicated. You can follow him at Ben Shapiro, so we can take it out on you and not just me. Ben, why are you such an angry Jew today?
God dang it, who booked this? Why am I even here? Oh, God, not Crowder. This day's long enough.
What's so rough with your day? You look like you've done a lot of Percocet. Like there's a glass in your eye.
Yeah, it's just, it's been a long day, man. It's just been a long day. I can't even talk about some of this stuff on the air. I mean, I killed a guy. That was probably the thing I probably shouldn't have said on the air.
Yeah, for a smart guy, you let that one slip pretty quickly. You're getting a little loose.
Yeah.
Your fiddle won't keep its polish.
This is why my lawyer says I shouldn't talk to the cops, but
yes, exactly.
And now that it's already out there. Like President Trump, I will go talk to Robert Mueller just as much as I please.
Well, okay.
Thank you very much.
So is it just personal stuff, or is it stuff that's going on in the news that has you so pissed off?
Oh no, the news is fine. I mean, honestly, like the news is better than fine. I like President Trump is doing excellent things on the foreign policy front, which is great. He has this interesting view of the world, President Trump, where everybody is a winner or a loser.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work well in economics because there can be mutual winners when you and I are trading products and services. Mm-hmm. But it does work really well on foreign policy, it turns out, because it turns out that if Iran loses, everybody wins.
Yes.
And so that's been really good. Like,
I just got done saying it right before this. What's wrong with being? I said people will often say, "Well, that's reductive." What's wrong with being reductive with a nation that commits gross violations of human rights when they don't have a nuclear arsenal?
Yeah,
there is no middle ground.
Again, this is the part that's hilarious to me, is everybody's like, well, you know, that Iran nuclear deal was preventing them from getting a nuclear weapon, and those moderates, they were really being emboldened by the nuclear deal. It's like, well, you know what? If they want to be moderate, you know what they could do? They could just give up their nuclear weapons, like without a deal.
Yes, exactly.
They could just stop funding terrorism. In fact, I did an entire piece on this yesterday at my website, Daily Wire, where we talked specifically about the. I'm sorry about that, but you know, just because we're wildly more successful than anything else out there.
This is absolutely true. There's no doubt about it because you employ slave labor. It's amazing what you can do with children at computers in Bangladesh. Continue.
Well, I mean, you're wondering why I had a bad day. Our contract just got tossed in the garbage. But in any case, but one of the things I was saying is that there are only a couple of nations in human history that have had nuclear weapons or were developing nuclear weapons and gave them up. One was in 1993, South Africa gave up their nukes, and the other was in 2003, Gaddafi gave up his incipient nuclear program. Both of them did so as a show of good faith to the world. It wasn't that we came along and said, here's a bunch of money, now will you give up their nukes? Because that would be stupid. Then they would just say, well, I'll keep the money and develop my nukes.
Right.
Instead, it was a bunch of regimes attempting to moderate themselves first, and then as a symptom of that moderation, they were saying, here's our nukes. So trying to say that Iran was going to moderate because we gave them a bunch of cash is stupid. If they wanted to moderate and have a bunch of cash, they could do so without any agreement at all.
Right. Well, a comparison would be a plea bargain, if you're talking about South Africa, if you're talking about Gaddafi, versus sort of Kramer versus Kramer, Dustin Hoffman with the kid in the ice cream tub, just saying, don't you do it. Don't you do it. That's the big difference. There is a big difference. One occurred before and one occurred after. And here's the thing, like I just talked about, we're not nuking them. We're not bombing them. We're just not going to do business with them. We're just going to isolate them. I mean, even liberal parents just make their kid have a timeout or put them in the corner. We're not even spanking them.
And let's be real about this. It is providing Israel the option to spank them, which I think is a good option. It's providing this newfound alliance of Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, the capacity to actually fight back against Iranian aggression. Because what the Iran deal really did mostly was it said to any of those nations, if you do anything against Iran, you're in breach of this agreement. You've destroyed world peace. By Trump saying, listen, this agreement's no longer here, then it becomes very clear who are the violators of the peace in the Middle East. And that was obvious for anybody who had half a brain anyway, since Iran has taken over Syria. They've now taken over Lebanon. They've taken over most of Iraq. They've taken over Yemen. They've taken over the Gaza Strip, too, I mean, for the amount of funding they're giving to Hamas.
Right.
Like, what exactly, like, why was this controversial in the first place? I will say, to Obama's credit, it was Barack Obama who created the alliance of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, and the UAE. He did so completely unintentionally, just like every other good thing he did unintentionally. But this was mostly Obama's doing, because by kissing Iran's ass, he put everybody else in a position where they had to suddenly ally with each other in order to face down Iran.
Yeah, but you know that's very temporary. And if we look back and something happens, no one's going to blame the alliance that you just mentioned. They're just going to blame the Jews.
Yep.
That's what happens historically.
I mean, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
You're wondering why I'm having a bad day. Every day is a blame the Jew day. That's just the way it goes around
exactly.
here.
We were just talking about that when you're talking about obviously the listen, Israel, gave up land in a defensive war. This is where people talk about it like, oh, you're paid. I'm not paid by the Jews. I would take the money and I would talk about big Jew money. But when you talk about Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and they said, we're going to wipe them off for being Jews, I'm amazed that you didn't just take all their stuff. But my point is, in the realm of history, they'll look back and listen, let's be honest. Do we really think that Saudi Arabia and Israel are going to be allies for a long time? No. I think Jews could be left holding the bag long term, which is always what worries me with these temporary alliances. They never last with Islamic countries.
I mean, I think that's true, but I also think that this is the best position Israel has been in its entire history, insofar as there are now a bunch of states that are suddenly saying, you're our allies, you're not our enemies. I mean, the Saudi Arabian leader, Mohammed bin Sultan, literally said to the Palestinian leadership, take the deal that's on the table or sit down and shut up. I mean, that's an amazing, amazing thing. Yeah. And it also demonstrates, by the way, how a lot of these countries were using the Palestinians as pawns for so long. Because they obviously don't care about they don't care about this stuff enough to actually abide by their previous principles. It was always a ruse. It was always, we're going to use this as a club against the Jews. Well, now it turns out we need to use the Jews as a club against the Iranians. So that goes immediately by the wayside.
Well, that's my point. Pragmatically, they're in the best place that they've been in a while. But doesn't it make you a little bit leery just to trust someone with the name Muhammad?
Well, no, not necessarily. No.
He's not being honest. This is because he's angry.
No?
Yes, absolutely. How many Jewish Israelis are named Muhammad? Probably not many.
That's a weird question. I'm sure there are not a lot of Jewish Israelis named Jesus either.
This is true. No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying they're in a good place right now. I'm always worried because that's very temperamental.
But for the Jews, now is good.
Yes.
Okay. If we could have just taken now, like throughout human history, that would have been fine.
Yes.
Because it turns out that now was usually us getting killed. So as long as we're not being killed, and there are a bunch of temporary alliances, turns out better than no alliances at all.
Exactly.
Friends, better than people attempting to kill you. So I'll take it, Fine
it's not exactly next stop vodka stands across the Middle East, but, you'll take it. You take the W at this point. That's today's lesson. Take the W when you can take it. It's funny that you mentioned this, good versus bad and kind of on the world stage. That being said, on economics, let's kind of get rid of the tariffs and stuff, which we agree on. The tax cut, though, is remarkably popular. So when you combine that with foreign policy, and Iran just did us a favor by burning the American flag in their government there after the deal was ripped up. It's like, oh, okay, maybe you were Eddie Haskelling it, and this wasn't exactly the portal to peace. Do you think this spells potentially re-election for Donald Trump? Tax cuts popular, foreign policy?
If it were just policy, then the answer would be clearly yes, right? I mean, 57% of Americans now say that the country is moving in the right direction. It's almost impossible to see a situation where somebody does not win re-election under those circumstances. The economy continues to boom. The tax cuts are very popular. The regulatory cuts are having a solid impact on businesses. He's seeing success in his North Korean negotiations so far. He's seeing his success in creating this Saudi, Egyptian, Israeli, Jordanian alliance. All of this stuff is really, really good. Okay, and so on policy, it's very hard to argue with the results that President Trump's administration has been getting. The real question is going to be, every election is between two people, and unfortunately, Donald Trump still is the guy, right? And so the question is going to be, when it comes to 2020, and you see a lot of Donald Trump being Donald Trump, are people inured to it, which could actually help him, or are people going to be, shocked all anew when it turns out that there's somebody on the other side who is not the worst candidate in American history? Like, I think that there's a solid chance Democrats will pick somebody garbagey for 2020 because there are just so many candidates.
That was going to be my follow-up question.
From.
Who do you think is the likely pick, or if you're to narrow it down to a field of 3 to 5?
If you were to say 3 to 5, I would probably say Kamala Harris for the intersectionality of it all. Joe Biden for the Obama and the stasis and back to normalcy kind of campaign, and maybe Elizabeth Warren from the Bernie wing, unless Bernie runs again, which you could. I mean, at this point, there are no upper age limits to presidency of the United States. I mean, the skeletons from Holy Grail are actually filings for super PAC approval at this point.
Yes. I love how Matt Damon is no longer bitching about the actuary tables. If Bernie Sanders is going to run again, all of a sudden it's all quiet on the Damon front. Okay, well we have an unbelievable show. Of course, we just had Elon Musk, we have Ryan Bader, we have Blair White, we have Owen Benjamin. Let me ask this: you just mentioned North Korea. That's also a big plus this week. Like I said, big stress. A little disappointed when President Trump afterwards said, "Hey, he was great to these 3 people." It's like, oh, just take the ball and leave. But it is a victory. Listen, I mean, it seems like right now.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that's a victory. It is to the point where Trump says that sort of stuff where, like, our capacity for outrage is now gone. Because, like, okay, so Trump said something real dumb. Shocker. Like, wow. He said they were treated real nice by North Korea. Like, that's because he says that kind of stuff. I'm sure that everything is magnificent, everything is the best, everything is really nice. Okay, we get it. Like, but here's the bottom line. Those 3 guys are standing on the tarmac with Trump, and Trump made that happen, and Obama did not make that happen. So that is a point in Trump's favor. Now, the real question is going to be what happens in June. Right, so there are a couple of possibilities with what's going to happen in June. Is this going to be a situation where Trump kind of bends over backward because he feels like he's been given some goodies by the North Koreans? Or is this a situation where they're looking to come to the table not because they love President Trump or are scared by President Trump, but because their nuclear mountain just imploded in North Korea? Right. The fact is that they had a testing site, and that site completely degraded. It completely fell apart, and immediately they started talking with the South Koreans. So it's quite possible that Trump could have just become like the luckiest president ever. Right? That suddenly their nuclear program just unilaterally combusted. It just randomly exploded. And Trump's like, wow, look what I did.
Yes.
And that's fine with me. I mean, sure, good.
He's like a Chauncey Gardner who just walked into the right place at the right time. And North Korea's Dom DeLuise just running through as the set from Blazing Saddles comes down like, oh, damn. Yeah, we'll talk now. Which is why it's so remarkable to me that Justin Trudeau got stared down by this guy. That you could take a sample size of any country. You know what? I'll even throw Saudi Arabia into the mix. And you would not find a man intimidated by Kim Jong-un. Justin Trudeau is a marvel because he, for some reason, played ball.
That dude is intimidated by like a table, like a butter knife. I mean, like really, Justin Trudeau has about as much intimidation factor as like Lena Dunham clothed. Like there's not a lot of intimidation factor there.
Let me ask you this, because I know you're not a big fan of Trump personality-wise, but you have to be on a deserted island, okay? President Donald Trump or Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
On a desert island?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so.
You thought you were having a rough day.
The only reason I'd say Trudeau is because you could take all of his stuff and leave him to die. You can't do nothing about it, right?
Make him your coconut bitch.
Right, exactly. Like if it's just the two of us and it's up to survival. Like I feel like Trump's big, but he's I think a scrappy fighter. So and he's got about 100 pounds on me and a lot of interior rage. So
yes,
I doubt my own capacity against President Trump stuck on a desert island. Do not get between that man and what he wants. Justin Trudeau, however, as you just say, was stared down by Kim Jong-un. So I feel I have a slightly better shot with like I could appeal to his feminine side or some such.
Yes, exactly. Or you could challenge him to a pull-up contest, and then when he loses, just force him to be your indentured servant.
I know he's ripped. I mean, he's one of these guys.
He's skinny fat. He has the body of a pregnant woman without the bump. It is absolutely a shame.
I forgot I was talking to Mr. Atlas over here, Stephen Crowder.
Yes, Charles Atlas. That's because someone kicked sand in my face, and then I did the isometrics that I bought in the back of a comic book. But you're a pull-up machine, a CrossFit pull-up machine, right? Didn't you say you could do something like
That's exactly
30,
right.
40?
And I don't bench, just CrossFit. Yeah,
30, 40
yeah,
pull-ups?
I can knock out about 40 pull-ups in a row.
Kip-ups, but that's still impressive. That's still very impressive.
How dare you, sir?
It's a different dynamic, but listen, it is absolutely very impressive, and I just always throw it out there because a lot of people don't know that about you. All right, people can of course watch the Ben Shapiro Show at the Daily Wire. It won't show through your suit, Ben. For a smart guy,
that's why I'm doing
bad choices.
It's unverifiable, my friend. Why do you think I hadn't thought that through?
Yes. How many markets are you syndicated to now on radio?
So the podcast is now syndicated to, I believe, 40-plus markets, and we are in 5 or 6 of the top 10. So that's really exciting.
Absolutely, and it's fantastic. And he's part of the Westwood One podcast network, which, our free show on Thursdays, we're with them now, too. So see some new sponsors pretty soon. Mr. Ben Shapiro, at Ben Shapiro, thanks so much for being here. I'm sorry you were having a bad day. Hopefully we made it a little bit worse.
Oh, you made me feel so much better, Stephen. Who booked this thing?